So today I'm going over my super old list of the top things to improve upon from Skyrim before Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, but I never would have thought, this was like maybe 10 years ago that I made this originally. I never would have thought that we'd be this far along and it still wouldn't have come out, so I guess it is still relevant to do. And just a disclaimer, like, obviously, even when I made it, I loved the game, but people still, thought that I was doing it as like sort of bashing it, but it's more just like holding it to a super high standard and like, how can you make it even better for the next one? The number one is accurate hitboxes. Magic I praised and I thought was pretty good for the most part. The fact that all Magic is kind of hands-on and a skill shot, unlike a lot of games, like even great games like Dark Souls, you still get like a lock-on system. You don't really free aim, or you can, but nobody really does that. Here you do have to do a hands-on. So Magic is great with the hitboxes, but melee is pretty bad, and you can just even see that in the visuals. Like it won't, and a lot of games have this problem, but you can see that you're not hitting the enemy. You can see the enemy's not hitting you. They're very vaguely defined hitboxes, maybe overly forgiving. Number two is more weight and variety to the melee combat. Power attacks I praise. They're a good thing, but it needs more. Maybe a combo system, maybe something else. You don't want it to feel like Batman or Arkham style or anything like that, but, even more Dark Souls-esque, to bring up the comparison again. Like somehow that does melee combat super well, where every weapon has a unique functionality. Not only regular attack, but power attack, also running attack, jumping attack. Like they have very unique animations, or allow that weapons can clash instead of just being blocked by a shield. So there's a little bit of back and forth parrying going on. Number three is more interesting perks. There are too many passives that just give you percents of stuff. I know it's hard to come up with better ideas. A lot of games do this as well, but the percentage increases are not interactive at all. I even went so far as to say they're sort of anti-interactive because it just makes you stronger and everything's dealt with faster. X% to X damage statistic is uninteresting. A better model are some of the more interactive ones, some even game altering, such as Shield Charge, which combines two pre-existing gameplay inputs to create a new one, which actually makes logical sense. Sprint while bearing a shield and you'll knock down enemies with it. That is a very satisfying one that sort of like gives you a new ability in a game that doesn't have sort of traditional abilities in that sense. Aside from spells and shouts, it's not like you get melee abilities like Heroic Strike or some kind of a, crazy thing there. So to do it in a more hands-on way like that is very cool. Make health more meaningful. I only ever got Magicka or Stamina. Now this was at that point. Over time, I've tried all kinds of other things because you can actually use them as in for healing, destruction, sprinting, power attacks, etc. Health is sort of just there. Again, a common RPG problem, but if you're low, you can just heal yourself with your excess magic. And the fact that your health regens is kind of a mistake. I love that in Oblivion and Fallout 3. Speaking of the games that came out, immediately before Skyrim, that's a much better system because it forces you to keep you honest. Like either you have to use a potion or an item or use your mana, and even your mana didn't come back super forgivingly. So there is something to that. Nothing gameplay centric about health. Some of this is just me reading them back, what I said. Maybe more abilities which sacrifice it to do damage, like a build that lets you sort of suck your own lifeblood to convert it into abilities. No, this is a criticism which could apply in theory to any game where health is a choice to upgrade, as long as the other options are otherwise usable. Number 5, the bounty system is too simple. Now this is a major one. Even the karma system in Fallout 3 felt more interesting and dynamic. Here, it's literally just the guards will attack you unless you pay the bounty, and there's not much more to it. It needs to feel more open-ended. Compare Grand Theft Auto's wanted system, which is impossible to overcome and you can only escape from it, to Red Dead Redemption, and this is the original Red Dead we're talking about, where I had a high bounty intentionally because lawmen and bounty hunters would occasionally ambush me, leading to very fun and interesting scenarios that would happen on my way to an unrelated destination. I would be constantly attacked in a town, but only at certain points, and it could be overcome. If you kill enough of them, you'll be safe for a while and they'll stop chasing you. This is a big emphasis. It mustn't be so persistent that it makes towns impossible to enter and interact with. A criminal playstyle can't be so harshly penalized in a game where you do have so much freedom. I was basically saying Grand Theft Auto does it wrong. Number 6, mission variety. There is some, but it could use much more fleshing out. There's also no real puzzle solving to be spoken of. It's more of a gimmicky matching game in most cases, like just match the golden claw symbols with the door. Like it's nothing really elaborate. I sort of made my own mystery stuff just by my refusal to look stuff up. Like I still don't know how to get master level destruction spells. I have that little book that has a symbol in it, and it's like, go find something. So if the criticism from a lot of people is like, oh, it's too easy to do everything, meanwhile they're looking up guides on how to do it, there's a bit of a contradiction there. But in general, there could be more that are things other than just go here, kill this thing, pick this thing up. Number 7, fairly linear dungeons. I would rather have less of them, but have each one be more fleshed out and be different from the rest. Also, like have branching paths. A lot of them are very linear. The same goes for perhaps the game as a whole. Rather than having so much content, have a little bit less, but make it feel more varied. Number 8, make enemies feel more varied as well. Sure, they might look different, but essentially most do the same thing, just attack you within melee range. Spellcasters and dragons mix it up a little bit, but there's also no boss fights. That's a big lacking of a game like this, which I know it's easy to say that. Like, dragons kind of count, but they kind of wear on you after hundreds of hours of playing. Or dragon priest felt kind of badass. You just need more enemies that feel like boss type enemies. And I even posited the WoW comparison, like, how badass would it be if you enter a cave? And you have this happen a few times, like we summoned Potema is chanted by some cultist as soon as you walk into a cave. One of my favorite, kind of things you just stumble upon. You're just walking down the road and you go in a cave and you hear that. Where in WoW, like, the bosses would talk shit to you. They have all these quotes and dialogue. You will show the proper respect, like Terran Gorfian or something. So imagine if Skyrim, you enter a dungeon and then from the very beginning, the boss is talking shit to you, like, oh, how dare you enter my domain, or whatever the case may be. They have sort of unique dialogues and personalities, which is, again, still hard to do, especially in the dynamic exploration of the game, but a little bit of that happens in the main story, but even then, not a lot. Number 9 ties into the same boss idea. Better or simply existent boss fights. Dragons only somewhat count as they feel just more like glorified enemies after a while. Number 10. Improved enemy AI and attack patterns and improved companion follower AI. And I thought skill trees for the AI companions would be great as well. Give them more a sense of identity and just a little more refinement in terms of how you can control what they do. It's sometimes they just do weird stuff and go off on their own and die. Number 11, separate secondary skills from primary. This is a huge one. Who will use their first few skill points on lockpicking perks, for example, when you have destruction, one-handed, etc.? They should not be equated in that manner. I think most people would agree with that one. Number 12, greater incentive to do professions, crafting, gathering. In my first 50 or so hours, I was the lightweight. I really didn't want to do them or didn't feel like I had to. In a way, this is a good thing that it's a choice, but it could be encouraged better, which can be done. At this point, I don't even remember, like, when legendary difficulty came out and stuff, but that would be a good way to sort of justify encouraging it. Number 13 would be environment variety, not entirely a fault since it's Skyrim and you expect it to be snowy. It wouldn't make sense to have a volcano or a desert, but there still could have been a little more variety within those bounds. And even like design shortcuts, you see that a little bit on like the Sanguine Rose quest. Like you go in a portal and it takes you somewhere else. You could give us like, or even Oblivion does that great. Like you go in the painted world and there's a whole bunch of trolls and it's this whole grassland that's completely different than anywhere else in the game. So give us like a bunch of mechanics like that. A portal that takes you to a distant land and you can have an instance that's totally unique. There isn't really an area that matches the brilliantly contrary nature of Fallout 3's Oasis in the middle of the wasteland. And last but not least, even more of everything. Spells, quests, equipment, playstyles, etc. More of a good thing is always better. I was trying to qualify it a little bit because I did get a little bit of hate, like, oh, you're bashing the game, so I think I added this later. Note, I love the Elder Scrolls, and I played it for close to 100 hours over the course of 2 years. So yeah, this was super early on in it, and it's not like I played it nearly as much as I have by now, which is over 1,000 easily. Very substantial game for what it is, especially in its open world structure. It excels at not making you feel restricted, but that's why I recognize and emphasize its shortcomings. I like it so much I want to see the next game in the series be even better, which should be coming out anytime soon now, right? Because it only took 5 years between, at the time I wrote this, it only took 5 years between Oblivion and Skyrim, so surely we won't be waiting like 12 years before we get it. Self-love always inspires improvement. Being blind to the flaws of something, especially something good, does nothing to better it. And then these companies also get very complacent. Like, I had a lot of faith in Bethesda, and then they start to do these weird, shifty things. Yeah, that was just a fun little list from way back in the day. And it sort of shows you my sometimes harsh writing style. I kind of like that.